Now, does Australia need a fast rail network? It's a question that's been argued for over 25 years now. And today, after the Greens accused the government of, quote, crab walking away from fast rail, it looks like it could be going on for a few more years.
Imagine a single rail line joining all of the major cities along the eastern seaboard. Riding the line, superfast trains travelling over 350 kilometres an hour, connecting Melbourne to Sydney in under 3 hours, and onto Brisbane in around 5.5. It would potentially ease the demand on our already stretched airports and road networks, reduce pollution, with the added benefit of being extremely cool. Now, you might be thinking that flying is faster, but when you factor in cab rides, checking in, airport security and all the waiting round you do in airports, flying between Sydney and Melbourne actually takes an average of 3 hours.
If we build high-speed rail in this country, it's going to deliver billions of dollars of benefits to the economy, and all of a sudden you'll be able to live about 300 kilometres away from capital cities like Melbourne and Sydney and still be able to commute.
But the price tag for a system between Melbourne and Brisbane is pegged somewhere between $61 and $108 billion.
I look at Australia as a long way behind, throughout Asia, through Africa, through Europe. High-speed rail is just the common way to travel.
Now it seems that Labor might be backing away from the vision of fast rail that it committed to when it formed government with the Greens.
The construction costs are enormous. The tunnelling is extremely expensive, significant noise impacts, and that's before we consider these significant economic costs.
Hang on, a big party using the environment to fight the Greens over a major infrastructure project? We are in uncharted territory, people.
Australia and Antarctica are now the only continents left without a plan for high-speed rail, and if we leave it up to Labor, I'm worried that the Penguins are going to beat us to it.
For more on this, we've gone straight to the source. Federal Infrastructure Minister Anthony Albanese joins us now. Albo, are the Greens freaking out here, or are you and the government really crab walking away from high-speed rail?
No, this is nonsense from the Greens. If they support a tunnel, and there'll be 144 kilometres of tunnel for the high-speed rail network, it'll be the first time I've ever seen them support one. The Greens are opposing the rail freight network development that we're having in Sydney that'll take 3,300 trucks off Sydney's roads every single day. So all I was doing was making the point that we support the high-speed rail study. It was a decision that we made before the last election, not as a result of any agreement with the Greens. But the people have got to actually have a look at the reality, which is any infrastructure development brings with it some negative consequences, and the history, I'm afraid, is that often it's people in the environmental movement who object, and 350 k's an hour, you can't go around every yellow-bellied frog. It is going to have to go in a straight line, and I'm just saying that people, when they see the report, will need to have a good community debate about it. I'm a supporter of high-speed rail. That's why we're doing it.
Oh, well, when I see the trains, I think they look really cool. Imagine if our Prime Minister could get a bullet train from Canberra to Rooty Hill. She could be there every day.
Mate, I'll give you a big scoop. Rooty Hill's not on the network that's envisaged in the draft. That's been done. But she will be able to get one from Melbourne to Sydney, and they are very cool. It's a great way to travel, much more relaxing than struggling through cabs and airports.
On that point, and I agree that they are cool, won't you still have to get through traffic and on a cab to get to the train station?
You will, but if you could get from the CBD of Sydney to the CBD of Melbourne or Brisbane in 3 hours, then it becomes very competitive as an option. And in terms of relaxation, you can of course be sitting on the train doing work as well, and it has been successful overseas. There's a big difference also, though, with China and these countries. You might have noticed there's a few more people in the same space that exists on the east coast of Australia, and that's why the challenge is very much harder than it is in China or in Europe.
But this is about development, isn't it? It's not just about capital cities. If you link up other regional centres, they themselves become major cities, and before you know it, we are nation building and we can compete with countries like China and the United States.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that the first phase of the study has showed is that for stops such as Albury and Port Macquarie, it would bring that economic development. So together, a high-speed rail line with the national broadband network are two things that you can do that really open up the option of regional Australia not being at a disadvantage from the big capital cities. But you've also got to balance that with you can't stop too many times because that ruins the whole point of high-speed rail, becomes not so high-speed rail.
But Albo, you can still include Rooty Hill, all right? So just remember that. It's a possibility.
Not glorifying that response at all. Fair enough. Fair enough, Albo. Fair enough.
Thanks for joining us tonight, Anthony. Appreciate your time.
Good to be with you.